Box, where we explore the good, the bad, and the wacky in television. I'm Allison Lips. Today, Steve Weiner joins me. He was a writer on Late Night with David Letterman, and also wrote for Robert Klein, as well as the Mickey Mouse Club, the early '90s one that aired on the Disney Channel. Is there anything else you want to add?
No, we can get into other things, but I've written for Dick Van Dyke on a special for Nick at Night, and I've done a number of. I also, at the moment, I'm writing for the Criterion Collection, some of your audience may know, classic releases classic films on Blu-rays and DVDs, and I've been writing articles for them about classic comedians of the past, and so that pretty much covers it, I think.
Okay. And the first thing I want to talk about with you is Robert Klein.
Hmm.
When I was talking to our mutual friend Mike Chisholm earlier today, it was interesting how I realized that I knew Robert Klein as one of my dad's favorite comedians, along with the George Carlin, Alan King, and then Jack Benny, and a lot of the other old TV things, which is part of the reason why I do what I do now. But I didn't realize how big of a deal he was in the 70s because I didn't have that context. I've started to read a lot more books about stand-up comedy, so the picture has started to get clearer as Robert Klein's more than like that guy I saw with my family or Grace's dad on Will and Grace. And I wanted to know, one, what do you think about the fact that Robert Klein kind of gets lost in all of this, where we remember George Carlin. People do know who Robert Klein is, but he doesn't get mentioned as much as the others, even though in the 70s he was groundbreaking.
Yeah, I think is a complicated question about why he's not remembered as well, but it's sad for me, that because we have to go back a little bit
Okay.
because if you a couple of weeks ago, Robert appeared on the Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon, and as he
Okay.
said when he came on, this is my 89th appearance on the Tonight Show.
Oh
So
wow.
and he talked to Jimmy about his first appearance, which was in January of 1968. I saw that appearance. I was watching
Right.
TV that night, and I can tell you, as somebody who was a comedy buff already since I was 10,
Yeah.
that he really had. There was something. He was different. He was really special. Other than being hilarious, which he was, we all. I think my generation always felt like he was our comedian, and he just had a different way of approaching his material, and the observational material that he does, which is a style that has spread everywhere. He
Yes.
didn't invent it, but I think he really found a completely fresh way of doing it. Um,
Yeah.
and he became, not just because he was hugely popular himself, but he's influenced so many comedians over the years. I mean, Jerry Seinfeld admits it, talks about it all
Yes.
the time. Very clear influence there. I remember seeing a Tonight Show where Jay Leno and Billy Crystal were talking about their childhoods, and they said they had different rooms, but both of them had one thing in common. They both had posters of Robert Klein's first album, Child of the '50s, on their walls.
Wow.
So you get an idea of how hugely influential he was, and continue. I think it continues to be if people discover him. I think
Yes.
it's one of those situations where time changes and people lose contact and they don't know as much as they used to do. And I think you mentioned Jack Benny before. There was a time in this country where there were certain comedians that even if you didn't see them or didn't watch them, you knew who they were. You knew who Jack Benny was. You knew who Bob Hope was. You knew who Lucille Ball was. I can't. If you'd said to me in the '60s or even '70s or '80s, there'll come a time where there'll be people who won't know what the name Bob Hope means. I would have been stunned, but it happens. And if to the degree that it happened for Robert, I'm sad, and I wish people would rediscover him. They still can. There's all this material is
Yes.
out there, his records and his shows, his HBO. He did the first HBO stand-up comedy special. Okay, when HBO
Hmm.
was brand new, the first one
Yeah.
they went to was Robert to do that. Nobody had done that before. Recorded an entire hour of a comedian's stand-up and put it on television without commercials, without anything big production, and that opened the door for everybody else, whether it was George Carlin, whoever, all the comedians who followed. were there because Robert had opened that door, and Robert made many many specials for HBO,
Mhm.
and they're you can get them now. They're available. They're in many places. They're online. Some of them, and some of you there's a box set, etc. etc.
Yeah, and they're all on YouTube from what I can see, which surprised me because you told me to go looking for them and I had no idea they were all there.
I didn't know that. Yeah, I didn't know they were all there. I know there's a site called Clown Jewels, which
Yes,
had, and I didn't. I saw that they had him up there, and I didn't actually check to see if they had all of his specials. Well, there were a
I
lot of them.
believe they do.
Okay, great. So it's a great entry point for anybody who wants to go look at shows from the '70s on until the maybe the last one was what, I don't know how long ago, but it was not that maybe 15, 10 years ago, 15. I don't know off the top of my
I
head,
think
but
it was like 20 years ago.
okay, well I'm old, so time
Yeah,
changes.
because
Of course.
I was in my early mid-teens
Mhm.
because I remember watching it. For some reason, I was in my parents' bedroom with my dad.
Well, we won't go into that.
I, I, I think we were like folding laundry or something, and
Hmm.
I just remember looking up on the TV because it's on the dresser.
Hmm.
So yeah, there was a reason we were in there. It wasn't anything
No, no,
weird.
I'm sorry. I was just a bad joke. Please, you'll hear more than one of those, I'm sure, over the course of our discussion. Just ignore them and move on, like most people
Okay,
do. Okay.
got it. And I don't even remember what I would. Oh, okay. You know what? I don't even know who said this or what it is a reference to. I just wait. No, it had. Oh, yes, it was definitely you because I was watching the one of the podcasts with Mike.
Hmm.
And you mentioned that Robert Klein called you and said it's the ho ho guy, which I did not understand what that is a reference to. And I'm like, I
No,
gotta ask you.
I was telling Mike that story because it was an interesting sort of look to me about the way different people have different kind of personalities. I mean, David Letterman, who I work for, is not
Yeah,
the most necessarily the most comfortable person with people in general. I mean, I have enormous respect for him, and he changed my life. And and he's as talented as anybody's ever worked in that business.
yeah,
But he would not be the person who would call you at home in general for any reason. If he did,
no,
you'd probably start to worry. I didn't. I mean,
yes,
this situation. I mean, the job that we got with Robert, who had been recommended, my partner and I were recommended by Barry Sand, who was the producer of the Letterman show when I was there.
hmm,
And so I didn't even know we were even up for this or had been mentioned before. And all of a sudden, I picked up the phone one day,
yeah.
and then the phone rang. I picked it up, and he said, "This is Robert Klein, the ho ho guy, like the funny guy." And I mean, Robert doesn't remember saying
Oh,
this.
okay. I'm
Yeah,
like,
I did. Yeah,
is there something about ho hos that I don't
oh
know?
no, no, not at all. No, he was. I think he was just saying I'm the guy that makes people laugh. He has no memory of this at all. I remember it vividly because it was a signal event. I mean, when one of your favorite comedians calls
Yeah,
you on your home phone out of the blue, it says, "I'd like you to come work with me." That's memorable. So I
yes, it
remember that
is.
call very
You
well.
remember every word, and he's just like,
Not
"Who are
every
you
word, but I
again?"
sure remember because I probably blank. I probably whited out at some point, but I do remember. It was that he said Barry had recommended you guys, and he said, and I said, do you want to meet us first? And he said, no, no. Barry said, you're the best, and that's good enough for me. And I remember that he had said, listen, I'm going to be at Caroline's this Friday, Caroline's Comedy Club, which was
Hmm.
a legendary club in New York, now passed on.
Hmm.
And Lori and I, my wife and I, came down to the club, and we were seated at
Yes.
a table with Jerry Seinfeld, who I knew slightly from before from the Letterman show, and also he had worked. He got one of his big starts at the comic strip, which is around the corner, literally from me where I am now. And my writing partner had tried out a stand up there, so I had met Jerry through my partner as well. But we just sat there talking about how great Robert Klein was and how much we loved his work. So that was the start of my working with Robert.
And you mentioned your time at Letterman.
Mm-hmm.
Let's move to that a little bit. You were there for, I believe, 18 months?
Yeah, 13, I think.
13.
Yeah, 13.
Just over a year.
Yeah.
And within that time, you introduced well, you didn't introduce, but you are part of the reason why Letterman fans know Larry Bud Melman or Calvert
Yeah.
DeForest
Well, my
because he
partner
was
and
in.
I had discovered him. We made a short film called King of Disease. It was a
Yes.
parody documentary about the world's cheapest movie studio, and the idea, but like most parody documentaries, we made the color clips ourselves, and and we also made the black and white movie clips from the studio.
Yeah.
Now, Calvert had turned up at audition for a previous film that my partner had made and that I helped him with, and there was something about this guy that we just liked. There really wasn't a part for him in that film, but we had him as an extra in it.
Yeah.
And the idea for this documentary, with the original idea, was mine. And when I was trying to think of, well, what kind of actors would that studio have had or could be able to afford,
Yes.
Calvert came to mind immediately, and I talked to Carl about that. And of course, he loved the idea too. So if we see the original film, which I think may be back on available on YouTube, it's come and gone over the years,
Yeah,
but
it's on YouTube.
it's on now. And you see Calvert, you'll see him used in that film pretty much the way we used him on Letterman, because it was the film that got us into the original meeting with David and Meryl Marco. And over the course of that meeting, they said, we're looking for a guy like that guy in your movie for our show. And I said, well, I think that's the guy you're looking for. I'm not sure you're gonna be able to find anybody else who's more like Calvert than Calvert. So he became a regular.
So he auditioned for
No,
you?
no, he didn't
No,
audition. He got the job. Because you mean the original film?
for
He
the
had
original
come.
film, not for
Yeah, yeah.
Letterman.
Well, student films at NYU were generally, there was a pool of actors who were always available, and I don't remember exactly how Calvert came to the other film, which was a film that I co-wrote, but Carl directed,
Yeah.
and well, he directed King of Disease too, so that's not, but it was very much Carl's project, and I can't remember specifically uh, if how he turned up there, but I just remember coming there when we were shooting and
Mhm.
talking to Calvert, and there was just something about him, and so he stuck in the back of my mind, and the original idea for the King of the Disease was mine, and then I collaborated on the script with Carl, and then he directed it. And there was never a question that we were going to put Calvert into the movie, and to use him as one of these actors. And once we started playing with that, it just the more fun it became. And so if you see that again, if you see that, I think, and you remember Larry Bud Melman, or Calvert, as he got back to his real years later. Uh,
Yes, CBS.
Meryl Marcus said to me, Calvert DeForest is such a good name. We never should have used a phony one. And I think that name was actually Meryl's idea. And so when they went to CBS, um, Larry Bud Melman was considered intellectual property of NBC, if you can call anything with Calvert intellectual, and
Yeah.
therefore they couldn't use the name Larry Bud Melman anymore. So they just started calling him Calvert, which what is his name? Was his name?
Was he aware that everyone was intrigued by him?
I mean, it's one of those stories that I cannot ultimately give you too much, even though we were pretty close to Calvert. He definitely understood what was going on. He wasn't an idiot.
Okay.
Um, at the same time, I mean, I've asked him point blank, did he mind it sometimes? I mean, here's the thing.
Mhm.
I always had a line in my head of what I should and shouldn't do with Calvert. I didn't like to put him in a position where he would have to ad lib because he couldn't do it, and people would laugh at him for a general level of incompetence.
Yeah.
Uh, I was not the only person who came up with ideas for Calvert, so many ideas for Calvert did involve him ad libbing and getting in
Right.
trouble. Some of the famous stories, are from those experiences.
Like
The
when he's giving out towels?
Yeah, things like that. I mean, that was after my time, but within the course of the thing, there was a bit of both. And but I remember asking Carpet if he minded, and he didn't mind at all. Look, here's the thing. Carpet was already at that time not elderly, but he was, I don't know how old he was off the top of my head, but he was one kid anymore. And he'd been
Right.
trying to get into the business for ages. And what happened was we took a guy who really had no chance of ever becoming famous on his own
Right.
and made him famous. And Calvert was very much aware of that. He was aware that he was famous because of what we and the show did for him.
Yeah.
And I think he loved the attention. He loved being famous. He wound up with a William Morris agency, and
Oh,
I think
wow.
if you look over his career in general, I think he probably made more money in this business than I ever did. So I don't think he had anything to complain about, and he didn't. And but one of the fun things about Calvert is, as I said, Carl and I tried not to put him in a position where he would make mistakes. We would give him write
Yeah.
scripts for him to read, but that didn't mean he couldn't find his own unique ways of fouling it up.
Right.
I Right. I remember we had, and this didn't air, but I think this was just during the rehearsals.
Mhm.
We had a line for a Melman bus ad, which read, the line was, "Remember, Melman spells Melman." So on the cue card, it read, "Remember, M-E-L-M-A
Yeah.
M." So when we started to shoot the commercial, Calvert read it as follows: "Remember, Melman spells Melman." Now, we couldn't have come up with that on our
No.
own. I don't think we're that clever, to do that deliberately. But there you are. That was Calvert. But I mean, it was an amazing experience. I mean, specifically Calvert. I remember we had, Bob Hope came on the show, and I saw Calvert, who was very starstruck, who always tried to talk to the famous people, and Calvert's talking to Bob Hope and saying how much he loved his work, and Bob Hope said, "Yeah, you're really funny out there," I really think only in America.
Yeah.
Could a guy like Calvert wind up being getting a great notice from Bob Hope? So
Yes.
I think we in the long run, I think he was always fine. He was always happy with it. I never heard anything to the contrary.
I didn't think anything that was going on with him was cruel. It
Hmm.
wasn't completely like I'm not like it walked a fine line in some of the bits.
Yeah, wobbled line. I'll give you an example of how uh, Calvert's approach made something different made it something better and different
Yeah.
than you ever would have expected. Uh, we did a Christmas show as a special in, I think, July. It
Mhm.
was that kind of show, and the idea came about that Calvert would be on as Santa Claus and read the night before Christmas to some kids we would hire and
I think
put
I've
around
seen this, yes.
him. So when that it was this was not Calvert's fault. It was actually Barbara Gaines who wound up running the show, and Jude Brennan, who were there both production assistants at the time, and each one of thought they had provided a script for the other. They thought the other one had provided a script for Night Before Christmas to be provided for Calvert to read.
Okay.
Both of them were wrong. Nobody had provided a script for Calvert to
Oof.
read.
Yeah.
Now, if you were alone, if you had been told to go on stage and read The Night Before Christmas to children, and you suddenly realized you had no place to read it from, I think you would have said, "Could we stop tape?" Or just say, "I'm
Yes.
sorry, something's wrong. I don't have my copy of Night Before Christmas." Calvert tried to ad lib because he figured he had done something wrong. So he started to try to ad lib, and it was a very Merry Christmas after all. Ho ho ho! That was the way he ended. And none of us on the show had any idea what was going on.
Right.
I remember they cut back to Dave, and Dave took one of the blue cards and like mopped his brow with it and said, "It was magic, wasn't it?" And the next night, well, after the show, during a commercial break, we figured out what had happened. The next night, Barbara and Jude came on the show uh,
Mhm.
in in blackout, a dark, like not unlit, as if they were criminals, and
Yeah.
they had their names in quotation marks, Babs, Jude, and they told the story of what had gone hideously awry. So, as was often the case on Letterman show, the thing that went wrong was better than what the original right thing would have been. But that also gave you an idea of how Calvert's thinking affected this. So again, we couldn't create stuff like that. You couldn't make that happen.
No, he didn't do anything wrong. I don't think that would have been most people's reaction was to, "Okay, I'm just gonna improv
Right.
the night
Try to
before
figure out
Christmas."
and we had great shots of the kids ignoring him entirely, or yawning or whatever. It was, as Dave said, it was magic.
Yes, it was. Um, with so so you were writing for, let's just
Hmm.
say, the first year,
Hmm.
you were the one who accidentally came up with the pencil or the card through
I
the
didn't
window.
accidentally came. I wrote that. That was a
Oh,
joke,
that
young
was a
lady.
rope?
That was a joke. That was a written joke,
That was a
young
written
lady.
joke.
We had a it was your mail joke, and
Okay.
the question was via mails, is the glass in the window behind you real?
Right.
And I wrote what I thought was an okay joke, you know. Dave,
Yeah.
actually, I was going to have, I was trying to make more of a joke. So this is very early, and we were in those, we weren't even doing them. The big production things was a gradual thing where viewer mail became from being just a, in the morning show, which
Mhm.
I used to watch, it was just a remark. It'd be just a Dave joke. Over the course of the early period of the show at night, we started doing production things and then pre-tapes, and it got bigger and bigger and bigger. But this was still pretty early, and so I was trying to think of a way to make that joke, which I didn't think was brilliant, funnier. And I remember thinking, hey, oh, he crumbles up the letter and throws it through the window, so at least he's
Right.
making fun of the letter. But of course, you know, as anybody who watched the show regularly realized, and the letters were on cards. There weren't real letters there for him to read. They were, there'd be
Yeah.
they'd be attached to a art card, which the camera would focus on, and Dave would read the text off his blue cards. So he
Yeah.
just took the blue card and flipped it at the window. That was a joke. You know, it throws them away. We hear the FX window breaking.
Yeah.
And I didn't think it was the best joke I ever wrote. Far from it. I still don't think it's the best joke I ever wrote. Uh, but he did it 3 more times that night, about 4 times the next night, and then for the next 30 years. So
Yes.
it's one of those things that is the thing about this business. You just don't know.
No,
You
you
never
don't.
know. So if that's my most famous joke, I'm kind of sorry in a way, because I know I wrote a lot of better ones. But that was the most, probably the one that had the legendary thing. I mean, I did have a joke that I did like that made it onto the annual, to the best of the, you know, the annual anniversary shows. Made it
Mhm.
twice. 2 years after I left, it was still being done. I like that joke better, but you can't even. So people remember the glasses thing. But if anybody remembers
Yes.
the rabbit dog shaving cream dispenser, that was mine. Thank you. And we, how to make your mornings more shaves more fun? It's the rabbit dog shaving cream dispenser, and you push the button in the back, and the mouth foam up, and you use that. And that was the joke. And Dave loved it,
Okay.
and he used. Okay, so that was the joke, and I
I
liked it.
think
You
I've
know that.
seen that when you
Mm-hmm.
keep mentioning things where I'm like, I'm pretty sure I've seen that. I may not have seen it. There was a lot of going down rabbit holes with Letterman in
Sure.
my when I was in high school, not high school, well, high
Mm-hmm.
school to a certain extent, but college,
Mm-hmm.
between classes when you have nothing better to do,
Mm-hmm.
and YouTube existed at that
Mm-hmm.
time, so you can
Yes, I
watch.
remember YouTube existing. Please. Yes. So you see, so you would say, yeah. Well, thank you to Don Giller, the world's
Yes.
greatest Lettermanologist, who has preserved this material and put it on YouTube for people to watch. And it's really a nice thing that he did that. Uh, Nobody else was going to do it. Uh,
No.
and it really has preserved a lot of this, and now people do that. I'm not saying that Don invented putting old TV shows online, but I think now everybody does. A lot of the shows put their clips online for people,
Yeah.
and it's just the evolution of YouTube. But I think that for all of us, Don did a great thing, despite the fact that we didn't get paid for it, which would have been nice. But it was a lovely thing that Don did, and Don. I remember Don. I go back a long way with Don, so I remember him coming to visit when not probably not long after I left the show. And I'm still in touch with Don all the time.
Oh, wow, I did not know that you knew each other.
Mm, yeah, well, we're friends. I've known Don. I remember. I don't remember what year, but this is probably not that long after I left the show, and that I don't remember if he got in touch with me, how this happened, but we invited him over to visit, and we had a great chat, and we've been friends ever since.
That's
I mean, he'll
cool.
probably lie about the whole thing, but who knows what Don will say? Anything is possible.
I don't know him well, but
Hmm.
it's you can't be
He's a
a
great guy.
Letterman fan with the internet and not know who he
Not no
is.
Don. No, Don's a great guy, and
Yeah.
uh, line of mine. The nice thing about obsessive compulsives is that they do the job, so you don't have to. So it's like if I ever want to know what a given show was on a given show, or how many times the guest was on, or when my joke was aired, all I have to do is say, "Oh, Don,"
Right, and he pulls out his notebook
right, and then you
or
get
his
the
spreadsheet
yeah.
nowadays.
I don't know what he uses, but you get the feedback very quickly.
It's impressive.
Yeah, Don, yeah, it's amazing. And he started, I guess, probably started with video VHS tapes when they were doing this. So now it's all digitized.
You you were with Letterman that
Hmm.
first year. The morning show had just well, it wasn't
Well,
just canceled
it
because there
ended.
was a gap. It
Yeah,
ended.
it had ended about a year before. I
Yes,
think that sounds right to me. Again,
that
Don would
sounds
know better. Yeah, and the nighttime show, the late night show was. I mean, I was a fan of the morning show. I think I may have been the only person on the original writing staff who was like a real fan, who had been watching the morning show and had fallen in love with it. So
mhm.
this was at the time, when you're starting out as a writer, you'll take any job that they'll give you, but there's always the job that you want to have, right?
Yes.
And there were only two shows that were on the air at the time that I really would have loved to have written for, and one was SCTV and one was Dave, not necessarily in that order. So the fact that we got to be a part of the creation of that show, I think it's been a lovely thing for me, and it's meant to everything. And I can honestly say that I don't think I got a single job that followed that show that I didn't
Mhm.
get in some part, and maybe in many cases a large part, because I had the Letterman credit. It was a great door opener. People really respected the writing on that show. So it really made my career. So I've always said that without Merrill Marko and David Letterman, well, you wouldn't be interviewing me for one thing, but I don't know what would happen.
I mean, we're kinda desperate for people, so
Well,
it's
I know. Yeah,
possible.
you might have just picked me off the street where I was sitting there with a sitting on the corner with a hat and a sign that said, "Well, be funny for food." So yeah, that you might have picked me up that way, but
There.
who knows?
What was it like working then on that show then? Because you couldn't have known it would become what it became, and essentially, Late it was 30 years because Late Show,
Hmm.
in many ways, was a continuation, even
Right.
though it was different
Hmm.
for seveveral reasons.
Yeah, and
Partially
also
earlier hour,
the show
partially
evolved anyway over
yeah,
that much time as it would. So, but yeah, it was different when it went to 11:30. Uh, well, as I said, we all loved what we were doing, and we were really
yeah,
involved, and we wanted to do something really good. And it was a funny feeling of feeling like you're at a major network, but not at the same time. There's a lot of us. We sort of felt like we had snuck into the building. Speaking for the writers, and that somehow they let these children come into play, and we could do what we wanted. Meryl didn't have that luxury of feeling that way, and I give her the credit for being the one who had to deal with the network
yeah.
and on our behalf. And she never, whatever pressure she was getting, I don't know to this day how much she was, but she never let it come down to us. And but we all knew what we wanted to do, which was to do a show that made us laugh. And there, we knew we could get kind of try all kinds of things. And the wilder stuff, we thought that Dave loved that stuff and was willing to try it. And we didn't know it would be a success. I do remember having a conversation with, I think, with one of the associate producers on the show just the night before the show went on, and they
Mhm.
say, "What do you think? You think it's going to be a hit?" And I said, "Well, I don't know, but I think this is the right time slot. I think it could go maybe 4 or 5 years. Who knows?" Which a huge hit would have been 4 or 5 years, I guess.
Yes.
But who could have predicted this? We certainly couldn't have predicted, and particularly considering what a weird show the show started as. It was a very peculiar show when we started doing this thing,
Yes.
and people liked it. 11:30 that late at night. I don't know if it would have been as successful if we'd done the same show at 11:30, because they were doing a lot of this stuff in the morning, and in terms of ratings, it was not a success in the morning.
It was the wrong audience in
Yeah,
the
it was the wrong
morning.
audience. Uh, I think it was Merrill said that the producer kept saying wanting us to give away Buicks. So
I cannot see Dave doing that
no,
ever.
although Buick was always a good word for him, and both of they had, because there's a K in it, so they use that particular car brand for jokes a lot.
Yes. You'll probably appreciate this. With a lot of my, like, historical knowledge when I'm talking to my friends, it's like, "Do you know what I'm talking about? Do you want me to shut up or whatnot?" And
Mhm.
when it comes to Letterman, a lot of times they've seen clips online
Mhm.
that I didn't send to them,
Mm.
which we can thank Don Giller for that. And
Mhm.
they like them, like the various suits, which probably came after your time.
About which? Oh, yeah, that stuff
The
later, yeah.
suit of magnets, suit of
Right, that was
chips,
later.
suit of
Yeah, there's
corn.
Velcro, I think, didn't they do Velcro?
Yeah, they did
Yeah.
Velcro, they did marshmallows.
Mhm.
We can go through the whole
Th there
list.
was a very there you know, there's a history of that, which I mean, Dave was a big fan of Steve Allen's, as was
Yes.
I, and Steve Allen used to do those kind of stunts, and so I think
Yes.
that was probably where it came from. I don't remember. I don't know who actually
It's
originated those,
definitely, I
but
believe
yeah,
that lineage is clear, and
it's
Steve
very
always
clear.
appreciated that Dave made clear this came from Steve Allen.
Exactly right. I had a conversation because we wrote a cold open for Steve Allen when he was on the show, and so we got a chance to spend time with him. Both my partner Carl and I were big fans, and
Yes.
I have always been in the position that Johnny Carson, as great as he was, stole just flat out stole a lot of material from Steve Allen, specific material. I mean, the Karnak the Magnificent, the
Question
gags that
man.
was the Question Man, right? And the Tea Time movie, the Steve Allen did that bit.
Mhm.
Many other bits, the soap opera in the audience, they call it Edge of Wetness on Carson. He had done that too. And I just said to him, listen, I said, I started listening to stuff. He listed a few more. I said, does it ever tick you off? I said, you don't have to tell me if you don't want to. And he thought a second and he said, well, he said, Dave, I mean, Johnny has his own style, a very specific kind of thing, but yeah, it does kind of tick me off. And then we talked a little more. He said, uh, I never minded when Dave does one of my bits because he always credits me.
Yeah.
So I think that lineage is very very clear, and so those stunts, which when he started doing, I actually was always. It's interesting the line of things, the way the show evolved, because I
Yes.
think if we had pitched that to David the first year, wouldn't have wanted to do it. He just started feeling more comfortable and looser the more the show went on, and got wilder too in a lot of ways, which is also was a surprise to us. But that is things do evolve, people change, and shows change.
I'm trying because I obviously didn't watch in
Mhm.
order because
Right.
I wasn't born until 91.
Thank you for reminding me. Thank you. Move on. Thank you.
S so but so I never caught on
Mhm.
to things got wilder. I've
Mhm.
just seen random clips
Right.
from like, yeah, some of them may be dated, most of them aren't.
Mhm.
Clearly, I'm enjoying it if I'm
Mhm.
going to find others, but I don't have that context for it.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, I mean, there's always a difference with the history you live through and the history you pick up piecemeal.
Yes.
We in the '60s when I was growing up, I fell in love with all the great comedians of the past. For one thing, they were provided for us on. They were our children's programming. Because when I was a kid, in the
Mhm.
afternoon we'd have a Laurel and Hardy short, Our Gang, the Three Stooges, Warner Brothers cartoons, Abbott and Costello TV show, and so there were those
Yeah.
were the show. Those were before my time. They were in terms of in time space the equivalent of what Letterman was to you. So, but I would pick
Yes.
that stuff up in bits and pieces too. But it was there, and I had access to that, and I fell in love with that stuff, which was not, which made me interested in comedy history. And then I did start to investigate the whole history of those things, and for a lot of with friends of mine, Carl was one of them in high school. We went to high school together, who fell in love with this material too, and we would find out the history about it in the same way. I think that you're finding out the history that preceded you
Yes.
because you fell in love with it, then you want to know the history about it because you have that interest. Some people could just probably take it and walk away, but people like you're the equivalent of what I was in my time. I think that you fell in love with something and then you want to know more,
Yes.
and I think that there will always be people like that, and I thank God for all of you because that really
Thank
helps
you.
keep this stuff alive.
Yes, it does. It does get frustrating at times for me where I know that there's context I don't have and I can't
Mm-hmm.
have because I can't take a time machine
Sure.
and discover it from the beginning. A lot of
Yeah.
shows I know because I saw it on TV Land. So
Hmm.
now I can see, oh, this is episode whatever, season
Right. Right.
whatever. But growing up, I have no idea which season of I Love Lucy this
Sure.
was. I'm
Sure.
sure I've seen most, if not all, of the episodes, but
Hmm.
they weren't numbered at the time
True.
until DVD box
But I
sets.
was going to say you have the luxury of being able to buy a box of a TV show that you're interested in and watch it from beginning to end. We were totally limited to what was broadcast when it was broadcast. I Love Lucy ran in the
Yeah,
mornings here, and in my time, and they did tend to run them in order. So it sort of depended where you entered, but you could still see them in order. You might be starting in season whatever, and you
yeah,
cycle around again and come back to it. But we had to see it. That's the only way we could see it. There was no
right.
other way. I remember I started watching Star Trek in the second season. I had to wait till they went to syndication so I could see the first scene. Same thing with the Dick Van
Yeah.
Dyke Show. I started watching when I was quite young, but it was still the second season, and I finally caught up with it when they started to run the Dick Van Dyke shows in the morning on CBS, so I could see the ones I had not seen before. But it's the old line every old person will say to you says, if you want to watch something in our days, you had to be there. You couldn't
Yeah.
be outside. You couldn't go out. You had to be there and watch the show. It's the only chance you had. Otherwise, you missed it and it was gone. It's like the equivalent of what our parents said, our grandparents said to us about other kinds of entertainment. Uh, so that's it. Always changes. But I
Yeah.
think it's a great luxury, and you could also see them complete because syndicated TV shows got cut when they went in syndication because
A
they
lot of
need.
DVDs use the syndicated versions.
Well, I know it's something that's all that's available, unfortunately,
Yeah.
but I think a lot of some of the biggest ones don't. The Van Dyke Show is complete. I
Yeah.
think the I Love Lucy's are complete. I think the ones that are those kind of classics tended to be preserved better. It was a lot of question of who owned the original material. I don't. This is getting arcane. This may be arcane for some people, but you
This is
probably
the stuff
are
I
interested.
enjoy.
Yeah,
I'm
exactly.
the one who followed network executives. Like that was what I focused on with history. So,
Well, the story of I Love Lucy, which is really a signal story in many ways, because that when that show went on the air, a lot of the comedy shows were done live.
yeah, reruns didn't
There were
exist.
no reruns. No one ever thought anybody would want to see this stuff again, and they couldn't have if they wanted to. The best they had options of, they would film the shows on a
Kinescope.
thing, kinescopes, and send those out to other stations. But those were not broadcast quality or ever considered broadcast quality.
No, they aired on the West Coast
And
because
and
that's what they
Desi
had.
really, this was probably more Desi than Lucy,
It was
had
Desi.
yeah, and he had this. He said, "Look, this might be this is we're doing good stuff. We're going to do good stuff, and we think there might be a market for this in the future." And they
Hmm.
said, "You're crazy. Well, how are you going to do it? How are you going to put it on film?" He says, and then of course the history of that they got together with one of the world's great cinematographers, Carl Freund, and they
Hmm.
developed the three camera, what became the absolute standard for television sitcoms, to do live in front of an audience, but on film, it's a way of lighting it so that every camera could catch it.
Yes.
And they'd have multiple cameras there, all would have film, and they would all run it, and it would be shot like a movie but live. You know,
Jesse Oppenheimer's book about his time on I Love Lucy gives a lot of
mm-hmm.
insight
Yeah.
into
And,
that.
and there's a new book out now which I have yet to read, just a biography just of Desi,
Yes.
and the name of the book is The Man Who Invented Television.
Yes.
And I think it's interesting. It's kind of sad that he didn't get this kind of attention as much when he was alive,
Right.
but it's nice that he's finally getting the attention for as not just an entertainer, but as a groundbreaking executive. When Desi and
Yes.
Lucy bought RKO, their old lot where Lucy used to work and Desi used to work as performers, and turned it into Desi Lou Productions. That was really Desi that ran it until they divorced, and then Lucy took it over in the '60s and had to learn how to be an executive because Desi had done all of that. He loved doing that. It wasn't Lucy's greater interest, but he took it really seriously because Desi had. So she became a really good executive in the '60s. You probably know this as well. That Lucy played a big part in the existence of Star Trek.
Yep.
That
Which
Lucy,
always blows people's minds when I'm
I
like, I
know. There's a great story. I mean, the story was that it was developed and the network was wary of it. And Lucy said to them, I think there's a letter, but you probably know better than I at this point. But she wrote, I don't really know what this is and I don't really understand it, but I think it's something special.
oh wow.
Yeah,
You
and
gotta
and
respect that.
yeah, you really do, because she saw something in there, even though it wasn't her kind of material, and she said, "I think there's something here that could be special." There it was, and it was shot there. I actually got to visit the set of the original Star Trek because my father was friends with one of the original Star Trek writers, which was shot on that lot, uh,
Mhm.
and uh, that exists. If not entirely, but certainly has Lucy's plot part in that was definitely significant.
Yes.
Mhm. So we are drifting now, but it's fine with me. So, but if there's something you want to get back to, but I love I like this is what I like to do. I just love like talking about this kind of history too. I know this means a lot to you, so
Yes, I don't get to talk about this very often.
mhm.
Mike won't let me forget that David Bianculli is my mentor,
Yeah, great,
which
great TV critic.
yes, which is very cool,
Hmm.
but it's also like he's not just my professor.
Hmm.
He knows this, so this isn't going to be shocking.
Hmm.
I didn't know who he was
Hmm.
when I got to Rowan.
Hmm.
So everyone around me was like, "Oh my God, David Bianculli might be one of our professors." And I'm like, "Who?" So and then the Smothers Brothers book had just come
Hmm.
out.
Hmm.
So he appeared on Up All Night, which was the Rowan University late night talk
Uh-huh.
show that I worked on as a production assistant. And he says this is just an urban legend now, but he was behind the set growling at me and roaring at me like a lion. So this is
Because
the
what
what?
was your what would you have against you to growl at?
He was just being weird.
Oh, okay,
He
okay.
doesn't remember this.
I
So
I know. Well, Bobby
I'm
doesn't remember the ho
now
ho guy.
a little afraid of him for a
Hmm.
completely different reason because
Uh-huh.
I'm just like this is the guy that is such a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
Um and then it just became once I had him as a professor, I would walk into his office, plop down in the chair, and ask him like, "So, what do you have that I can borrow?"
Uh,
Because I
yeah.
was bored in his classes
Hmm.
because I knew a lot of that stuff
Hmm.
already. A lot of like, you don't learn everything in a classroom. You learn enough to go down your own rabbit holes,
Right.
but you don't learn everything.
Well, you can't.
So
There's just too much history.
exactly.
Right.
When I was teaching 60s and 70s, there were so many things that afterwards I'm like, oh, that would have been good to cover if I like
Hmm.
get another chance at this, which I haven't because the state of academia is a
Hmm.
mess.
Hmm.
But it's just like there's so much, and the overview I had already gotten. I mean, um, for example, we're talking about TV shows
Hmm.
that were released on DVD. The first TV show I ever got on DVD was Hogan's Heroes.
Hmm.
I was obsessed with Hogan's Heroes as a 10-year-old. No idea why.
It was a fun show. I mean, my father always hated the fact that it was hated that show because he
Yeah.
remembered what World War II was actually like and what the
Yes.
Nazis were actually like. So he always despised it. I used to enjoy it. I watched it, but I watched everything, and I could tell what was great and what was not great. But that show is middle ground, I would say, about in terms of greatness. Not a great show, but not a bad show, and it was fun to watch.
I just like any show that makes the best TV list and the worst TV
Hmm.
list at the same time.
I think I've worked on a few of those. So
Would you like to name names?
nope. No, I'm teasing.
No, I know.
I've been very very lucky because I worked on a show. I started on a show that was makes most well. We got if you know the 100 best writing things that Writers Guild did a few years ago. Uh, we got on by a hair. There's 100 best written television shows, and we were in a three-way tie for 97th place. Uh, And I will say to you, because they can't take this away from me now, but if SCTV had made the top 100 as it should have, absolutely
Yeah.
should have, we wouldn't be there at all. So we're there on a fluke, but we are definitely, in technical terms, we're listed as one of the 100 best written shows on television. Just that much.
So it was a three-way tie.
It was. I can't remember. I think Columbo was one of the others. I can't remember what the third was.
Okay.
Was it?
So it
And so,
ended
but
at 97 because
it
the
went. Yeah, it
last.
went something like that, or not. Yeah, it may have been one
Okay.
after us. I think something like that.
Okay.
So I'll take it. I'll go around saying I've worked on the 97th best written TV show, and
How
I
do
think
you
how many are
even
better.
how do you even rank that when it's like late night with
You know, people.
late night with David Letterman, Columbo.
Well, it was a vote. I mean, they took a vote of the membership, I think, and
But
I think
that's
that's so. It was just numbers. I think we were three-way tie in the numbers, and that was it. So
those are
we just got it.
those are very different shows. I don't
I
even
but movies are, when you get Oscars, you look at the movies; they're very different movies.
that is
How do you
true.
So I think it's always that's just awards in general. That's why I mean I love that it happened, but I don't take any of this stuff terribly seriously.
Yeah.
I had the misfortune of working on the Letterman show while SCTV was still, which was all of our favorite TV shows. It was still on the air while I was there. So the first
Okay.
year that I was available for Emmy Awards,
Mhm.
SCTV got 4 of the 5 writing nominations. And the second year I was there, got 5 out of 5. So we really didn't have a chance. And the moment the SCTV went off the air, which is after I had already left, started popping Emmy Awards all over the place. So I don't have one of them. But I can't complain because I think SCTV was a better show than ours. So, I mean, I love our show. I think SCTV was better. We all fit, actually. I don't think I'm telling tales out of school at this point because we all loved the show we were doing. We were great respect
Right.
for everything we did. But SCTV used to come on. We would be on. SCTV would be on 4 Fridays a month, and then one Friday we'd come in with a 90-minute special. And we always did better ratings on that Friday show than SCTV did. And we would come in Monday morning and say, "What were the ratings like?" He says, "Oh, they're not as good as I mean, yours was better than SCTV's." We say, "Oh, that's not right.
Yeah.
That's not right." What can you do?
Um I th- sure you've said this elsewhere,
Mm-hmm.
but you look fondly back at your time with late night, but you
Mm-hmm.
weren't there very long for a show that lasted so
Oh,
long.
it felt long.
Felt
you know,
long.
no, I'm kidding. It was a year. Yeah,
Well,
I
it's
was.
the grind.
Hmm? No,
When you're
no,
in it, it's the grind.
it's fine. I think over a period of time, I really have great respect and kind of bafflement of people who could do a long-term show, work on something like that for a really long period of time, because I
Mhm.
just think it's one voice, you know. And I think part of the fun of writing is trying to apply what you do to different kinds of shows and different kind of performers.
So
But
you
it
like
was
that variety.
yeah. I mean, I don't know how long we would want to choose to stay there if the degree we had choice on it, I'm happy with what we did, and I know what kind of impact we made on that show, and
That's true.
yeah, I'm very comfortable with it, and I think ultimately it was probably the right time to go. We without any going to many specifics of this, there was a change in certain leadership in position,
Mhm.
and we didn't get along with the person who succeeded the person we originally were with,
Got
and
it.
so, without naming names, but anybody who could read Jason Zinnemann's book doesn't have to have the names filled in for them.
Okay.
So, it is what it is. But it was a great year, and again, everything that came thereafter happened, I think,
Yes.
because we had a chance to be on that show.
Yeah.
I know, the Disney show, which is not a show we originally wanted to do at all, actively pursued us because they were trying to do. They had gotten instruction. This was the new version of the Mickey Mouse Club for those who don't remember,
Yes.
in the '90s, and they knew only one thing that we heard from the very beginning. We want a hip version of the Mickey Mouse Club. Well, who the hell knows what that is? And what is a hip version of the Mickey Mouse Club? So
So
they
you're
didn't
using
know.
the word hip in the 90s?
I don't know if I think the word was probably may have been used by the executives, but that was the tone anyway, whether or not they used the actual word.
Right.
But they
I
wanted,
just yeah.
yeah, they suddenly wanted something that was not. They didn't want the ears. They didn't want the stuff from the '50s. They didn't want it to be corny.
They didn't
So
want the sweaters with names on them.
no, they didn't want any of that stuff. That's all they knew, though. So they had been tasked by the Disney leadership at the time, Michael Eisner and Jeffrey Katzenberg, they said, we want this to be on our channel, but we don't want it to be like the old show. We want it to be a really smart show that people, could be really more contemporary. So since the executives had no idea what that meant, it was very easy to say, well, let's go hire people who have, credentials for doing something that's not traditional. So we were actively pursued by Disney, very, very hard. Uh, and I think that may have been the only time in my career I can say that was the case, that we were actively courted by them. And we didn't want to take the job because we thought it was going to be a nightmare. But at some point in the process, they had hired a terrific producer, Steve Clemens, and a great head writer, Alan Silverberg, who was a good friend to this day. And when we met them, we got this, oh, they get it. They know we can make, we were making jokes. I made a joke at our big meeting that could have gotten me, lost us the job in a second if they were uptight about the Disney thing.
Okay.
It was in a hotel room here in New York. Everybody had flown in for this, and again, I'm sure you know this. The jobs that you don't want, those are the ones you're going to get because you're most relaxed when you come into the meeting, right?
Hmm.
The job that you desperately want, you're going to be terribly nervous and you're going to blow the job interview. Well, we didn't
Yeah,
want this job,
I did
so
that when I had an interview for a page at the Late Show.
ah, well, you probably didn't want that job, believe me, whether or
Uh,
not you had.
yeah, in hindsight, I'm like,
In
that's
hindsight,
probably
yeah,
for the best, but
yeah.
I was just so like I realized like as I was there, I realized like, oh, sounds like I've never seen this show.
Yeah, you get nervous, but in this case, we were relaxed, and I remember at one point, they're trying to sell us on this thing,
Hmm.
and I remember I think it was Steve Clements who said we have these hired these really great talented kids who are wonderful actors. As you get to know them, know their personalities, you'll enjoy writing for them and creating for them. And I said, wait a minute, you're saying we're going to actually have to meet these kids? And I got a laugh. I said, and I remember thinking, oh, they get it. They get it. And okay, so maybe this wouldn't be the worst thing in the world because they have a sense of humor about what they're doing. And
Yeah.
once you've got that, then you can do it. You can do the hip stuff. If they know if they know what the joke is in general, that means they're open to experiment, to play around.
Right. It
And
seems like they were trying to capture some of what Nickelodeon at the time because
oh, they
Nickelodeon was
definitely were.
very
They
irreverent and yeah.
absolutely. NBC, Disney rather. Disney was just opening this theme park, which was going to have a working studio in it. Nobody wanted to go down there because the people who saw the specs said the studios weren't good enough, which they weren't for a really professional show. And so they had to create their own show. So this
Hmm.
idea came up. And yeah, they wanted, and part of this was because Nickelodeon was there in Orlando
Hmm.
as part of their theme park. So now they were going to have a studio as part of Disney's theme park, and they were trying to compete with Nickelodeon absolutely. And Alan Silverberg had worked as the head writer of Double Dare at Nickelodeon. So he had actually had Nickelodeon experience, which was interesting, which was made it worth it for them.
So
And
Double
so,
Dare to the Mickey Mouse Club. Or
well,
was he an executive?
no, he wasn't executive. I think he was. I think he was credited as being head writer, but he did a lot of the. He really had a lot to do with Double Dare being a big hit, and so he was
Yeah.
very enticing
I
for.
grew up watching Double Dare.
Oh, okay. Well, get Alan on your show. Maybe well, Alan tends not to like to do these things, and I don't know why, but uh,
Okay.
I'll give you his contact information. See if you can talk him into it.
Okay.
Um, and you can talk about Double Dare with him and the Mickey Mouse Club with that if you're interested. But I had never seen Double Dare. We didn't watch Nickelodeon. And
You weren't?
we no, I was in my 30s already
Yeah,
for
I
goodness
know.
sake. Yeah, I know. So we when we got down there, once we got the job, uh, and we got to meet the other writers too. All of them were very much like us. They were like, there was a certain feeling like, what the hell are we doing here? We had
Yeah.
made this commitment. Now we're living in Orlando, Florida. We were either from New York, from LA people. We had people from both coasts, and not generally kid show writers. Although one of our writers, Tim Grumman, had been involved in the creation of Pee Wee's Playhouse. But I think
Which,
he was the
whether or
only one
not
on
you
the.
consider that a children's show is
Well, but
debatable.
again, the same thing that appealed to them too because that was a
Yeah.
hip kid show. It was on during the Saturday morning, so it was considered
Yes.
hip. So, and trying to think, and Hillary Rollins on who had worked at Nickelodeon in general, I think, on a number of projects. But basically, I hadn't worked on Carl and I hadn't worked on kids television. Jeff Zimmer had come off of Fridays he'd written for, and it was not generally a kid show oriented thing. So, but what was nice about that is that we had all agreed, including Alan, from day one. I don't think it was ever spoken. I think we just felt this way, that we were not going to write down. We were going to
Right.
write what was funny to us, and if it didn't make us laugh, it wasn't going in the show. And they used to go around saying that Disney used to say this is we're going to have Saturday Night Live for kids. And I wasn't a huge fan of Saturday Night Live, particularly at that point in history. So we all of us, you say we're trying to be SCTV for kids. That was the real aim, our
Right.
private aim. And I think if you really know SCTV well and you watched our show regularly, you could sort of see what we were taking in terms of our approach that was like that. Um, but we had in the early days there, the first couple of seasons, we had a pretty loose. It was not they were not that hard on us at Disney. They didn't give us a lot of trouble, and we got to do some really offbeat, weird, funny stuff. I had to talk my friends into watching it. I said, you watch, it's actually funny. I think, I'm actually proud of this stuff. And finally, if I got them to do, they come back and say, that show's pretty good. So I told you. uh, and it was a great experience. And, like everything else, things change. And we did 3 seasons of that we all loved doing. And 4th season, for reasons that are probably too arcane to be of interest to you, I think that changed. And they made it much harder to work there. And the entire original staff split after the
Hmm.
creative staff. They all split after the 4th season, and they had a whole new bunch of people come in for the 5 through 7. So,
I'm just making a note to watch more SCTV than I have seen because that's
oh,
the
you
second
must,
time. That
yeah,
is the
you must.
second time today someone has mentioned that to me. So I'm going
Well,
to
you
take
would
that
love it.
as a
You would
sign.
love it because you're very hip, and you would know the stuff that they were parodying that not everybody knew. They would parody obscure television shows. They would parody
Yeah.
obscure movies. At the time, they were doing movies that people had already forgotten, except people who loved movies.
Right.
So
I,
they would do these really arcane parodies, but they were so freaking brilliant. And all the performers because they all became
yes.
legendary stars. But the writing on that show was so good. The combination of those performers and those writers, that was about as good as sketch comedy got on television.
Yeah, I've the last time I saw SCTV, not Nick and I, TV Land had it for a couple of weeks.
Mm-hmm.
I was very young and did not understand
Yeah,
at all what I
it's
was
very
watching.
arcade stuff, right?
Right.
But yeah, but you look at the people who came out of that show, and many of whom are still at the top of the business. Andrea Martin
Mhm.
is like a legend, and she works all the time. So many other people from that show were just great talents. And it was, for us, it was the gold standard. We never, at the Disney show, we were saying we are trying to be like them as best we can, and we didn't think we were able to make it. We didn't because it was a Disney show,
Right.
but we did as good as best as we could, and that's what we were aiming at. Every now and then we would hit something. Sometimes we used to be certain specific things would influence us in a specific direction because we were doing something like we had never had more than 5 writers at a time on the show, which and bear in mind this was a 5-day a week show with no commercials because it was cable. We were doing between 11 and 13 discrete
Oh,
comedy set
right.
sketches a
Because
week. Okay, and
Disney,
so we would
the Disney Channel was pay an extra channel at the time. It was
right,
premium cable. It wasn't
right,
basic at this time.
right. Yeah, well, we put a stop to it being premium, but it wasn't premium when we were doing it,
Oh, it
but it was
wasn't.
there. But so we would do. I mean, I remember we wanted to. I think it was the second season or the third season where we're getting ambitious. And there's a sketch. This is one of those ones you don't really have to know references, even though it was a parody. It was a parody of an old show, in which kids in school would compete, to who's the smartest team in school. So there are all these different characters in this sketch,
Oh,
and the
the
sketch
the
was called,
GE
yeah, the
College
College
Bowl.
Bowl thing, yeah, and they did a show called High IQ, a parody, and what made that brilliant is there were like 6 different individual characters, and the comedy came from the way each character bounced off each other.
Hmm.
So we said what would be the Disney equivalent of something like that, and we came up. But was I guess Family Feud. You must know Family Feud, right?
I know Family Feud.
Right. So we came up. Now, the one thing that Disney people did like is they liked us to parody Disney because they thought that was hip. So we actually had a fair amount of leeway to make fun of Disney, old Disney, and some new stuff, but mostly classic Disney we made fun of. So we
Yeah.
came up with an idea called Fairy Tale Feud, and the premise was it was Disney characters competing against each other, and
Mhm.
on one side we had princesses, so we had Cinderella and Snow White and Little Mermaid, and on the other
Right.
side we had three of the seven dwarfs. We had Sleepy and Dopey and Grumpy. So we were able to sort of do our version of what that thing was. So the jokes were bouncing off of these characters. We come back to, I mean, Dopey, for example, he didn't know anything. He just like pushing the buzzer. So he would just hit the buzzer over and over again. Uh, every time we cut back to Snow White, Snow White was like polishing the floor or something like. Oh, not, or actually Cinderella, I guess, was doing that. Cinderella was polishing the podium and on the floor, cleaning up around her. Little Mermaid was out there at one point. They cut back to her head was a bowl of water, and she lifted up and said, "Sorry, I just stepped out for breath of air." You know, that's what that thing was. So that was what we were trying to do,
Right.
is to get that kind of feeling, and we did have that luxury of doing it. In fact, I think you'll enjoy this. Um, I came up with a sketch. You may have seen. Did you see ever in your childhood ever see any of the '60s Disney comedies like The Love Bug and things like that? Was that ever part of your childhood?
No, it was
No.
not.
Well, it wasn't part of the childhood of the Mouseketeers age either, by the way, except that it was on the Disney Channel. But the executives, they knew there were Disney properties, and if we made fun of them, we could go crazy. And The Love Bug, which was a film about, actually a couple of films
They did
about.
remake it with Lindsay Lohan when
There
I
you go.
was
Yeah.
younger.
So the premise was that this Volkswagen became
Beetle.
sentient, and whatever. So I wrote I had an idea for would do this trailer that the Love Bug had been recycled and was now Herbie the Love Can of Cream and Mushroom Soup, and so we had we put all these little clips that were parodies of Disney comedies of the '60s, but with a can of mushroom soup instead of a car. Now they loved that. They didn't like the idea of the can that the love bug had been recycled. That they didn't like. They didn't mind it was a can of mushroom soup. And my feeling was always, but then there's no premise. The joke isn't there anymore. What's the premise? Nobody ever cared. Nobody ever asked us. It's just good. It just happens. But we did that, and why that you might find this interesting is some years after that. I don't remember why I was doing it, but I was going through my old Letterman material. The actual pages which had the two or three. You know how they're working. That we would submit if we're doing like the museum of something or other, the Hard to Believe, whatever. Each
Yeah.
writer would come up with a list of like 10 jokes or 12, and Meryl would pick out the one she liked best. So she would check off the one she liked. The other ones would just go into your folder forever.
Yeah.
And I went back. I don't know why I was doing it, but I was looking at a Museum of Hollywood pitch sheet, and Herbie the Love Can of Mushroom Soup was on that sheet, and I had no memory of ever having written it before. So your brain works the way it works, right? It
Yeah.
was the exact same joke, except I think it was a different. I think it was split pea soup. That's the only thing that was different. But you know what? It was better on the Disney show because we got to actually produce it. We could
Yeah.
actually do scenes from this movie. We would not. It would have been a one joke on the Letterman show and moving on. So I'm glad that we got to do it at Disney. But they actually let us do that kind of stuff. They loved it. The audience didn't always get it. Sometimes they did. Sometimes they didn't. But as long as people were watching, I don't think Disney cared. At least in the first three seasons, we didn't have trouble with them. And I think we may have touched some of their things too. I think they were amused by some of the stuff because they were Disney executives and they lived with
Yeah.
this material. So
Yes.
that's what we were trying to do. And I think when things were going well, it worked.
Yes. It did. Is there anything else you want to say before I wrap up?
It's it's your show, Allison. Whatever you'd like to talk about. If you're satisfied, I'll go have dinner. Otherwise, I'll be happy to talk as long as you want, or we could do it another time if you like. I'm having a good time. I hope you are as well.
I am too. I can talk to you all night long, but
Well,
you
I'm
need
old. I might have to use the restroom at some point, but otherwise, you could talk to me as long as you want. But I'm enjoying this. We could always do another one if you wanted to, or if there's anybody out there actually want to see it, which I sincerely doubt. But that's just me. So we'll see. They watch you. I don't know whether they'd be bored by me or not. But we'll see.
I mean, we can
You
also have conversations that aren't recorded.
Of course, I actually believe that in life one should have conversations that aren't recorded. I think many conversations should not be recorded. I,
Yes.
I'm I'm all in favor of casual conversation.
Okay. So, yeah,
Yeah,
we will have conversations
we will.
outside of the podcast. And
We will indeed.
thank
Yes,
you
go ahead.
again.
Thank you, Allison. I enjoyed it.
I did too. And until next time, I'm Allison Lips. Remember, television is a medium neither rare nor well done.
Fred
Bye.
Allen. Fred Allen.
Yes, Fred
Fred
Allen.
Allen. Hmm.